The artist known as Sting is the composer and performer of the fabulous soundtrack to the early 90s film classic Leon, which was released in 1993, starring the young Natalie Portman and Jean Reno.
You know her?
No?
I think we'll be okay here, Leanne.
This soundtrack is a soundtrack of my childhood and is one that I remember with fond memories. In fact, it takes me back to the most beautiful days as a child growing up. In recent times, it is more reminiscent of a somber reality, a darker truth, a set of deeper meanings, and a more ominous sign of realities around us that we oftentimes fail to perceive or to come to terms with. There is always more to the game of politics than meets the eye. And in this video essay, I intend to unpack and explicate the hidden hand of a rising star within the political arena, revealing the cold reality at the same time of political poker from the purview of a masterful player.
He deals the cards as a meditation, and those he plays never suspect. He doesn't play for the money he wins. He don't play for respect.
From the very beginning of this song, we are introduced to a mysterious unnamed character. It is apparent to us that this man is playing poker. While we are told that he deals with cards, we are also told that he does so as a meditation. Although involved in the game, he appears to be somebody who is somehow transcendent. He's above the average player. He does this as a form of meditation. He does have an active role as he is dealing the cards, but at the same time he seems to be somebody who is a deeper thinker. He's meditating over the art that he's involved in. So he's more than just a passive player. He's a very, very connected, a very deep thinking, and a very deliberate player in this game, which is a very good introduction to what is to be essentially a wonderful tapestry of meaning, but also one that is very close to the reality we're seeing today in the Middle Eastern political circuit.
Those he plays never suspect.
And those he plays never suspect. And so here we are given a bit of insight into the angle from which he's playing, because poker or cards is a game like any other that requires for one to outsmart and outmaneuver the opponent. And it is said that he is engaged in a game at a level in which the opponent is unsuspecting. They don't know what he has prepared for them in the next 2 or 3 moves. He is somebody who is able to outsmart and outplay and outmaneuver his opponents. And so they are never suspecting. This is something that is quite interesting because Ahmed Shara is a political player who is somewhat opaque. It isn't very clear where his full allegiance lies. He appears to be somebody who is playing cards at a level by which it is impossible, quite impossible, to tie him down to a specific corner or a camp. So there is an element of, you could say, deceit and mastery of deceit, a sleight of hand that gives him the upper hand. And that is something that actually is not only necessary, but vital for one who is engaged in this political process to succeed.
He doesn't play for the money he wins. He don't play for respect.
He doesn't play for money, nor does he play for respect. And this is quite interesting because the game of poker is a game that is played based on stakes. This is a game that the gambling industry and those involved in high stakes and high reward activities participate in. It is a very competitive field, and it is a very dangerous field. It is one in which somebody may win everything, but also may lose everything. And so he's playing in this game, but it is atypical and quite strange to discover that he doesn't play for the money that he wins. He is not in it for the money, and he's not in it for the respect. Two very key components, money and respect, that motivate the actions of many men of power and influence. And so although he is very, very committed to this art form, he's meditative in his process, he is not playing for money and he's not playing for respect. He's supposedly playing for a higher purpose, a higher unknown purpose. And again, this is very, very interesting as an observation. You know, when we talk of money and wealth, we think of people such as Donald Trump or Mohammed bin Salman, you know, the economic incentive or the economic lever that they're able to pull. It's not something that Ahmed Shara, in the current state of things, is known for. And it doesn't appear to be a motive for what he's doing in his nation. Neither does he play for respect. So when you look at strong men such as Putin, who is driven by pride and ego and a sense of respect and honor, not everybody involved in the political process is involved for the sake of honor and respect. And again, we look at someone like Ahmed Shara, it does not appear as if he's playing just for respect. And so that leaves us with a question. What exactly is his motive? What exactly is he in this for? What is his motivating factor and what is it that he's aiming towards?
He deals the cards to find the answer, the sacred geometry of chance.
He deals the cards to find the answer, the sacred geometry of chance. He's engaged in something far greater than just the game itself. He's looking for answers, the sacred geometry of chance. And so he's engaged at a higher level, something beyond just the ordinary material means to seek answers. And when you combine these two things, that he's a card player, he's playing a game of poker, but at a level that is far higher than the average person who is motivated by money and power. What we see here is that this leader or this political player, he is very specific and precise, almost scientific in his movements and maneuvers. But at the same time, there's an esoteric edge and a spiritual core to his maneuvers. He's an atypical player.
The hidden laws of a probable outcome, the numbers lead a dance.
The hidden law of a probable outcome, the numbers lead a dance. Something more than just a material. This is about hidden laws of probable outcomes, and this kind of evokes fate and destiny, providence, also hidden laws and unspoken realities. Again, the numbers here lead a dance, despite being very, very, you could say, somebody whose aspirations are more than just a worldly. This could be equated to somebody who's working for prosperity in this world, but also a more spiritual dimension. Ahmed Shara, as we know, his history was part of the HTS outfit or organization, and prior to that, ISIS. This is an organization that effectively is driven by the desire to establish a khilafah on earth, one that is effectively a representative of the will of God. So it is more than just political here. We're looking at a man whose entire career hitherto or prior to this was one of establishing the law of God on earth. And this is how he actually was able to advance his career up until this moment. So this is a man who is not just motivated by money or not motivated by money or power or respect, but there is more to it than that. And he's somebody playing the game along with the other political players, but on a very different plane, a very different level.
I know that the spades are the swords of a soldier. I know that the clubs are weapons of war. I know that diamonds mean money for this art, but that's not the shape of my heart.
The suspicion that he's playing poker is completely established. And he's informing us that he understands the parameters, the players, and the principles of this art or this game, while also reassuring us at the end of the chorus that he, unlike the others, isn't motivated by money, war, or weapons. That's not the shape of my heart, which is a wonderful play of words, as we will come to know a little later on.
He may play the jack of diamonds, he may play the queen of spades, he may conceal the king in his hand while the memory of it fades.
Muhammad al-Jolani actually succeeded in reshuffling the cards of the political situation in Syria that were frozen since like 5 years.
He does indeed shuffle the cards, and I found this to be a very poignant and very interesting use of words. He shuffled or reshuffling the cards. As we can hear in the lyrics of Sting, this is a masterful player who's playing opponents that are unsuspecting of his true intentions and his higher purpose. A game of cards like chess or football that are all based on warfare, strategy, deception, and precision. Poker, unlike the others, is a high stakes and high reward activity. One, as I said early on, that may secure your fortune today and may cause you to lose everything tomorrow. It requires, therefore, a lot of guile, cunning, and deep understanding of human psychology, which is also essential for being able to read the room and understand who you are facing or what situation you're in. It is not for the naive, and it is not for the overly idealistic.
So this isn't going to be some kind of a caliphate, or you're not going to make Syria into a country like Afghanistan, because you know that there are people who say that maybe you want to behave like the Taliban.
There are many differences between Syria and the Taliban. The way we govern is different. Afghanistan is a tribal community. Syria is completely different. The people just don't think in the same way. The Syrian government and the ruling system will be in line with Syria's history and culture.
So the culture of Syria includes rights for women, it includes education for women, it includes tolerance for people drinking alcohol. Is that all acceptable to you?
When it comes to women's education, of course. We've had universities in Idlib for more than 8 years. I think the percentage of women in universities is more than 60%.
And alcohol?
There are many things I just don't have the right to talk about because they are legal issues. There will be a Syrian committee of legal experts to write a constitution. They will decide, and any ruler or president will have to follow the law.
Politics represents the highest order in this supposed game or art form. A standard deck of cards usually has 52 cards, and this is divided into 4 suits. So you have the hearts, the diamonds, the clubs, and the spades. Now, in the refrain, in the chorus, Sting goes through each suit. So he mentions, I know that the spades are the swords of the soldier. I know that the clubs are weapons of war. I know that diamonds mean money for this art, but that's not the shape of my heart. Wonderful double play there. So he mentions all 4 suits in this refrain, but also gives a meaning. However, we want to go a level below and unpack some of the meaning that will be relevant to the analysis that will follow later on in this audio. The concept of suits itself is derived from the class structure, which was at the time followed in France, which is the home of the revolutionary spirit, and of course one of the earliest European nations to rid itself of the corrupt royal class and the corrupt church. So the structure of society at the time was divided in 4 strata, beginning with the spades. Spades represented the elite, the royal class. Those are the very highest level of the social hierarchy. Then we have the diamonds, and the diamonds represent the merchant, the mercantile class, the oligarchy, those with wealth. Then we have the clubs, or the club, and this represents the masses, the proletariat, the working class, the average person in society. And finally, we have the heart, and the heart represents the clergy or the religious establishment. Now, as he says at the very end of his refrain, the chorus, that's not the shape of my heart. So we know that he doesn't identify himself with the club, nor with the spade, nor with the diamond. He identifies himself as somebody with a heart. So a religious person, a spiritual person, which again It's quite interesting because, as I've mentioned earlier on, Ahmed Shara began his career working for the Khilafah. And so, if he were to be classified under one of the four categories as a political player, he would most certainly be considered somebody who is more on the theological and religious bent of political agenda and ambition. He is in it for the heart, essentially. At least he was up until the uh, the reinvention of who Ahmed Shara was or Ahmed Jolani was. So he is, of course, in the realms of theology and reestablishing the order or the structure of religious khilafah or religious order. And so he's engaged in this from a spiritual perspective. Ahmed Shara is the mysterious player, the master manipulator, and the mystical figure engaged in a deeply corrupt and merciless industry of money, power, and military engagement. One in which strength is what determines the success of a leader, not his conviction for truth and justice. It is strength that the opponent respects.
He's got a strong past. I'd be very nice. He got a strong past, but I liked him a lot. I think he'll be a great representative, and we'll see. You're going to have a strong past to put that one around. You cannot be a weak person. If you're a weak person, we would just be wasting time. So he's a strong guy, and I thought he was good, and let's see what happens. But we're going to give him a fighting chance by taking off the sanctions. So
he is indeed playing a game of political poker, trying to outmaneuver and outplay such opponents while concealing the true motives behind his gentle smile and firm handshake is a tremendous challenge, and one that the observer may mistake for being a compromise in one's principles or perhaps a weakness in one's will. But the reality is far more complicated than just that.
He may play the jack of diamonds, he may play the queen of spades, he may conceal the king in his hand while the memory of it fades.
So as we enter the second verse, we are told that he may play the jack of diamonds. Now the significance of this is that the jack of diamonds is typically associated with shysti and manipulative characters. He can be considered perhaps a maverick or a saboteur of some sort, a double agent and a traitor. If I were to give an example of a political player in recent times who fits this description very, very closely, I would say Anwar Sadat of Egypt. Anwar Sadat would have been the one to play the jack of diamonds, one who is shysti, manipulative, a maverick, a saboteur, and a double agent, perhaps a traitor.
See the day.
I've always said this.
You always call me an old lady, Mr. President.
She's not as old as this.
Would fit that specific political mold very, very closely, and there are many others, but he stands out in this region as an exemplary figure in that regard. Then he tells us that he may also lay the Queen of Spades. The significance of this line is that the Queen of Spades is a very powerful card and one that can be utilized to turn the game around to your favor. In other words, Ahmed Shara has the option of turning the political world upside down. He can be a disruptor in the political arena, much like Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi later on in their political careers. However, being the contemplative and the masterful player that he is, he chooses instead to play the long and measured game, neither rushing nor capitulating to the temptations or to the pressure that is daily present in his political engagement. Rather, he is calm and calculated.
He may conceal the king in his hand while the memory of it fades.
He may conceal a king in his hand while the memory of it fades. Wonderful poetry. Ahmed Shara has a king in his hand, and in the game of cards or poker, a king represents wisdom, experience, power, and authority. attributes that Ahmed Shara has demonstrated in all of his career up until now. In fact, he spent most of his adult life in the political world. He was born into this milieu and bred for the role of leadership. He isn't a debutant like Morsi of Egypt, nor is his vision blurred by utopian perspective on the world. Indeed, he has paid the price necessary to be in the position he is in, both in blood but also brutality. Not many people have this depth of insight and appreciation for the complexities and challenges of the political chessboard. The king is also a positive and auspicious figure, a force of good. Ahmed Shara exudes confidence and is a symbol of a younger, more pragmatic class of Middle Eastern rulers who may be one day capable of successfully turning the dial and transforming the regional balance. However, we must be reminded that in a world full of illusion and ominous players, he is concealing his true intentions and abilities, allowing his past to be forgotten while he waits for the opportune moment to reveal himself. We must be reminded that Ahmed Shara was, up until 6 months ago, the leader of HTS, which was a terrorist organization, and he was a man with a bounty on his head. And so, although he has reinvented himself in public spaces and has been welcomed into the establishment, he still has that card in his hand. And it may be forgotten by others, but he still has that card in his hand. He's concealing that card, and we have to remember that.
And if I told you that I loved you, you'd maybe think there's something wrong. I'm not a man of too many faces. The mask I wear is one.
The third and final verse gives us more insights. If I told you that I love you, you'd maybe think there's something wrong. And this is very, very relevant and very, very pertinent when we talk of the issue of Palestine and Ahmed Shara's response or lack thereof towards the liberation of the people in Palestine, in particular Gaza. Now, at this junction, we have to admit that there is a dilemma because Ahmed Shara is a new entrant in this political sphere and he's operating in a world where you cannot reveal your true objectives. It is far too early and far too dangerous for him to speak in a way that may reveal his ultimate goals and his ultimate destination. His rise to prominence was mirrored by the escalating tragedy in Gaza on December the 8th, 2024.
كل هذه المعركة يا أخواني التي أقيمت بفضل الله عز وجل هو إنتاج ثوري بحت. ما استعنا بأحد ولا دعمنا أحد بل اعتمدنا على أنفسنا كله من مالنا. كل هذا الإنجاز من جهدنا ومن صناعتنا. رأيتم الصواريخ التي صنعناها والقذائف التي صنعناها وتخطيط كله من إنتاج ثوري بحت.
HTS captured the heart of Damascus, and Ahmed Shara was introduced to the Arab Muslim world and to the world at large as the man who would liberate Al-Aqsa. However, he is a hostage to the world he now finds himself in, trying to survive and thrive. He did not create the rules, and he does not control the game. However, he is subject to its players and to its parameters. His deafening silence and apparent indifference to the ongoing suffering in the nearby Palestinian realms would appear to the uninformed spectator as an open betrayal of the cause. As such, any public attempt to express his commitment to the cause may sound odd and even incredible to his primary audience.
I'm not a man of too many faces. The mask I wear is one.
I'm not a man of too many faces. The mask I wear is one. While having many faces is a sign of hypocrisy, duplicity, and a lack of integrity, in the case of Ahmed Shara, he admits to not being a man of many faces. In other words, he is not somebody who assumes different personalities to appease different people. However, he does declare that he's wearing a single mask. He's wearing a mask, and that it's only one mask out of necessity. Anybody who plays poker or who knows about the rules of competitive, I don't play poker by the way, but it is something that is evident and known, that it is essential for you to conceal your hand, to not project what you have and to lead the opposition off track. We often hear of the expression poker face. That is to maintain a very, very indifferent face. Do not give anything away. It is essential, therefore, to wear a mask to conceal your true intentions, your true emotions, your true sentiments. And it is evident that Ahmed Shara is wearing that mask. As he says, I'm not a man of too many faces. The mask I wear is one. In the game of politics, it is essential to conceal one's intentions up until it is executed. If I look at the current political arena globally, we find wonderful leaders that are being supported by the population, such as Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. However, revealing your face too early on in the game can be very detrimental. And we've seen this in previous episodes, in previous decades. Those who reveal their intentions too early risk being targeted very, very early in their career. And we've also seen on the other side of the spectrum, those who do have many faces, those leaders when it comes to the issue of Palestine, who have had many faces. So, for example, Yasser Arafat has had many faces. He has been the guerrilla lord. He has been also at the same time the signatory to peace treaties of Israel. He has been seen sitting with Israeli prime ministers and presidents. He has had various faces at various times in his career. Sadat is also somebody who has had various faces. He's gone from being the person who was leading and masterminding the famous 73 war, the Yom Kippur war, or the Ramadan war. But at the same time, we've seen him later on to be the face of normalization of Israel. He has had many faces. We've also had Nasser. We've also had King Abdullah of Jordan. And so, in the political arena, when we talk of Palestine and the various political heads and figures who in the past have been committed to the liberation of Palestine and at some points have gone the other way, we find many examples. To the contrary, however, there are those who have had a bare-faced approach. They didn't wear a mask. They expressed themselves openly and did not attempt to hide the true intentions from the West. And in the like of this, we would have President Morsi of Egypt, who I believe revealed his intentions far too early. There is a need to have a poker face. And revealing the intentions too early can be a huge detriment to your political career and continuity. Likewise, King Faisal. King Faisal, with all his commitment and his integrity towards the Palestinian cause, it was too evident that he was against the Israeli agenda, the American agenda, which in itself isn't a bad thing. But if you are playing the game of politics, it can be a very fatal mistake to make, to reveal your hand too early.
Would I ask His Majesty what sequence of events he would like to see now in the Middle East?
The first thing is the extermination of Israel.
Mossadegh, of course, of Iran, in 53 was removed because he made his intentions clear, very early on. Then you have Gaddafi and Saddam, who are people who didn't make their intentions or their sentiment towards the West ambiguous. Later in their career, they made it very, very clear. And of course, we know how all of these rulers ended. Okay, so there is a necessity and need to wear somewhat of a mask, okay? And I believe Ahmed Shara, at the moment, is playing by that specific strategy. He is wearing a mask. He doesn't have various faces. He is the same person when he meets Trump, when he meets MBS, when he meets different figures. He's the same person. So there is consistency. But nevertheless, he still has a mask on because I believe the true face of Shara hasn't yet been revealed. And it would make sense for him to keep it concealed and covered until he has full control or tamkeen or full sovereignty in that region. Therefore, he's straddling between two extremes, one of the deceptive Arab leader and the other of the openly hostile and disengaged Muslim ruler when it comes to the issue of Palestine and the greater liberation of the Middle East. He's in between. He's currently in a very, very intermediary position where he isn't outwardly antagonizing the Western hegemony, but at the same time, he isn't overly, we could say, he isn't overpromising You know, he isn't idealistic in his demands or in his strategy. He's in between, wearing a mask, and he says, I'm not a man of too many faces. Now, it's quite interesting because, again, this verse opens with a statement. If I told you that I loved you, you'd maybe think there's something wrong. Because for the person who was jubilant and hopeful on December the 8th and 9th and 10th, celebrating this revolution as a sign of a greater liberation of the Levant, including Palestine and regions surrounding that, they may be seeing Ahmed Shara today and consider him a traitor, somebody who has betrayed the cause, and they may consider him one of those Arab rulers who has now essentially traded the liberation of Palestine for global acceptance and to be a part of the establishment. However, he does mention, again, he doesn't have many faces, he wears a mask, and it's important that we understand that there is an evolutionary stage when it comes to political careers. It is not possible to go from being on December the 7th an outlaw in the international realm to now being accepted as part of the establishment. There is a process and a procedure that has to be followed. And so, although he tells you he loves you, it may sound strange and unacceptable in some cases to take this as a sign of continued commitment to the cause. However, he then warns us.
For those who speak know nothing and find out to their cost, like those who curse their luck in too many places, and those who fear of loss.
But those who speak know nothing and find out to their cost. Quite an ominous and a bleak statement here. In my interpretation, in the current landscape, it represents the pundits and the critics who are continually engaged in demagoguery and populism. The sophists and populists who weave and fashion narratives out of thin air. They frame a grim and alarming vision of reality as a means of stirring up the negative emotions in the collective conscious of the masses, who are both detached and distant from the inner imaginations of the poker being played in this murky and perilous political path, full of tricks, traps, and trails. It is very easy for somebody to go on YouTube or to go on social media and to undermine and to talk down upon what President Ahmed Shara is doing in the region and internationally. It is very easy. In fact, it is very, very lucrative when you monetize that and project negativity and demagoguery in the name of calling out Arab rulers, those who know nothing, because these people typically judge on the apparent, what is made known, what is in the public realms. And for the most part, they condemn and detract from the true purpose and mission of the rulers in the region. Commentators and critics are beyond and outside the fold of the reality behind the political wall. They understand very little of the real risks and dangers and stakes at hand, yet they seek to make commentary and to shape the perception of the public and the masses. There are indeed consequences for these sorts of activities and for the words being spun in public. And such consequences may not be apparent to them or to their audiences in the immediate moments. However, it does contribute towards sabotaging and wrecking the mission and purpose for those who are actually engaged in the greater game.
Like those who curse their luck in too many places, and those who fear of loss.
Like those who curse their luck in too many places, and those who fear are lost. So we are now given the closing lines. Those who curse their luck in too many places, and those who fear are lost. This represents, in my interpretation, the hopeless masses, those who have been told time and time again that the rulers are playing a game of deception and are against the masses. And as a result, they're influenced by the propaganda of demagogues, propagandists, and career critics. The masses in this situation are like children from a failed marriage. They are torn between two warring parents, unsure of who to trust and where to seek comfort. They are left to lament their lot and mourn their pitiful state before anyone willing to listen. And this really does encapsulate our current condition, where the Muslim masses being presented daily with these commentaries and analyses by people who are populist and oftentimes negative towards the activities that are taking place. It leaves us, the masses, feeling lost, unwanted, and unsure as to who we should rely upon and where we should turn for support. And as a result of this, they are too often seen and heard in too many places, social media, in the masjid and local cafe, cursing their luck. In other words, complaining, lamenting. And this mentality does have a consequence. It does have a consequence. And we are told that this will eventually lead to something that may be negative for us. The continual and incessant reinforcement that all the rulers are bad. Palestine will be forgotten about. Syria is going to be another Arab nation that does not care about its neighbors. There are no leaders working towards providing a solution for the Palestinian problem in the Middle East. These are programmed into us, and we hear it over and over again. And this does have an impact on how we perceive the events and how we feel, and how we project our own insecurities into the world. And that does indeed have an impact and an effect. Ahmed Shara is currently holding onto the deck of cards, which he was dealt with on December the 8th onwards. And although it appears he's facing disproportionate odds in the face of overwhelming obstacles and tremendous influences, both regional and international, he is playing for a higher purpose. I believe he's playing for a higher purpose. And he's maintaining a frame, he's maintaining his poker face, he's making all the right moves. It is upon us then, those who wish him well and who wish to see the rise of a prosperous, sovereign and influential Syria, to reserve immediate judgment and to realize that a great poker player, a political poker player, is one who's capable and willing to wear the mask and to conceal his hand until the opportune moment arises to turn the entire game to his own advantage. Political analysis is seldom based on current events, but often contingent on the long-term perspective. It is therefore my belief that Ahmed Shara is indeed the King of Hearts, and he is not in this for the money or the respect or the weapons, but for a much higher and deeper purpose. It is therefore upon us to be patient.
I know that the spades are the swords of a soldier. I know that the clubs are weapons of war. I know the diamonds mean money for this art, but that's not the shape of my heart. That's not the shape of my heart. That's not the shape of my heart. Mi corazón